Hi, welcome to the optional extra video for the MX-5. I don't know if you noticed, but I included some interviews from Bob Hall in the main video. One of them is actually a Mazda video, and the second one is from a YouTube channel called Gene Knows Cars. And I'll put links in the description for both of these videos so that you can check them out. I mentioned it in the video, but in the 1980s there really weren't many open tops left. Certainly reasonably priced ones. There was the Fiat 124 Spider, which in America was sold as the Pininfarina Spider, and that was imported by a guy called Malcolm Bricklin, who created this thing called the SV1 in the 1970s and eventually started importing the Yugos in the late 1980s. And the second one was the Alfa Romeo Spider. And both of them were old designs. They hadn't really been updated very much because, of course, all these car companies figured that open tops were going to disappear. So these were the last vestiges still around. So it really was an opportunity for Mazda to create something new and exciting. When we get to 1984 and we see those three clay proposals or three design proposals which the Japanese team and the Californian team created, the Toyota MR2 was clearly a major influence at the time. One thing I think that's very underrated with the MX-5 is the soft top. It's almost a design classic. I'm not sure if other car companies had produced something like this previously, but it was just very, very quick and easy to put it up and put it down, and still is. And the fact that you can do it from the driver's seat is just amazing. Mazda obviously realized that you're going to be putting the open top up and putting it down a lot. So again, they just thought a lot about it and created something that worked really, really well. It's surprising to me that they've dropped the electric hard top or even electric soft top from the fourth generation car. It's still gone back, they've gone back to this manual situation. So I'm not sure if that was the right move. Personally, I don't think it was the right move, but I guess Mazda know what they're doing. And talking about Mazda not knowing what they're doing, the RF version that looks sort of like a coupe with the two buttresses behind you, again, I don't really get that car because it instead of being an open top, something where you've got a lot of openness around you and you feel that sort of open top roadster feel, you might as well be in a hatchback or something like that, and then just with a removable central section. It just doesn't seem to be the same sort of open air feel. I'm not quite sure why they produced that. But anyway, that's presumably some people like it, some people are buying it. So Mazda have always been very mindful of how simplistic or not simplistic they needed to make their car. They could throw a whole load of features at the car which would make it very heavy, would also make it more expensive. And you look at companies like Mercedes with the SLK, they've decided to go that route and created a very successful car. But it's a luxury car. The Mazda MX-5 was not really going for that big luxury market. It was going for a popular car which everyone could afford. So what they've done, which I think is quite clever, is they've offered a lot of features on the car. And in fact, if you look at the current version, certainly if I looked at the US brochure for the current version, they only have two versions. They have this version that essentially has all the features on it, and then they have this stripped back sort of track day version where they've basically taken everything off and then just put some lightweight components on to try and make it more of a track day special. Because there's two markets for this. There's a smaller market for people who just want a very light sports car, who don't care about air conditioning and things like that. And then there's people who just want to have something that's very comfortable and something to cruise around in, and they're not really going to go on the track. So Mazda's really done well to strike that balance between those two camps. So Mazda's philosophy of the Jinbai Tai, or horse and rider as one, guided the original car's development. But they also listed 5 other requirements. It had to be as compact and light as possible. It had to hold 2 people with no wasted space. It had to be front-engined with rear-wheel drive and a 50-50 weight distribution. It had to have wishbone or multi-link suspension to give it the best handling. And the chassis needed to provide a solid connection between the engine and the differential. And for the most part, they seem to have stuck to these values, but there's a bit of me that doesn't really like those 5 goals. I think they worked well for the 1980s when they were trying to define the car, but I don't think they work well now, because when I've done project development, it's been very clear that when you look at project goals, things that you want to achieve, people come out with goals like, for example, the chassis needs to provide a solid connection between the engine and the differential. Well, they're saying that because they want to have a stiff chassis, and they want to have a stiff chassis because they want to provide good feel and handling for the car, and they want to do that because they want people to be happy with how the car drives. And so the best thing for them to have put instead of something very specific is to go back to the original thing of what they wanted, which is we want to have a car that's fun to drive. Now, you can have a car that's fun to drive, and you can solve that problem many, many different ways, particularly nowadays. Now you have maybe EVs that have batteries down low, and they have different ways of trying to create chassis, and there's been developments since then. But by making goals that are very specific to technical requirements, you end up having something that isn't really a good goal. Anyway, I would rewrite them, but I would rewrite them something more customer focused rather than engineering focused. So also I joke about the weight gains, talking about adding aardvarks and upright pianos and things like that. But it's not stopped the car from being fun. So even though particularly the 3rd generation car got very heavy, the car was still fun to drive. It was still a barrel of laughs, and most people just didn't notice because they added more power and they worked with the suspension to make it so it works. So again, Mazda's always struck the right balance and done the right thing. When I was looking at the different versions of the MX-5, there were so many special editions over the life of the MX-5. It always seems like there's more special edition cars running around on the road than like the main production models, given the amount of things they must have produced. So moving on to the 4th generation car, I wonder if the lower bonnet, the new look that it has with this low bonnet look, is because of pedestrian safety legislation. If you look at the Mark III car, it was sort of hacked with this wacky solution where the bonnet sort of pops up in case of a crash. And that's obviously a lot of work to do. It's expensive to implement and it's more weight. It's probably better just to create a shape of car that's going to work better for pedestrian safety legislation. And maybe that's why Mazda have gone for this new type of look for the 4th generation. In my mind, it seems to have lost its way. It doesn't seem to be something that harkens back to those original 60s cars. It seems to be harkening back to, let's say, 2002 BMW Z4s, which may not be the right way to go. But and certainly the sales seem to be a lot lower. So maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But in my opinion, the 4th generation car just doesn't seem to have that same excitement in the look. And that, of course, has led to these lower sales. And of course, now they're trying to share the platform with Fiat to try and presumably trying to keep the MX-5 going. And of course, the market for roadsters is fairly small. And the Mazda MX-5 isn't just competing with competitors' cars, it's also competing with itself, because old MX-5s are still available and it's easy just to go and buy a used MX-5. So they're finding it a lot harder to try and sell these cars, obviously. And to Bob Hall's point that yes, there have always been roadsters, going back to the 1910s, there have been roadsters, but we also now have increasing development costs, and that means you need a special chassis. it's getting harder and harder to justify the amazing outlay to go and produce a brand new Roadster, particularly a relatively cheap Roadster. And presumably that's the reason why the chassis for the MX-5 is essentially the same chassis that they've had since the original car. They've tweaked it, they've adjusted it, but it's the same backbone chassis. And that leads us to the next point. Will there be another MX-5 in the future? Sales of successive generations keep dropping. If it carries on this way, Mazda might have to end production. There's obviously talk now about making a new car. Will it be a hybrid or an EV? Given the Mazda's MX-5 update cycle, we can expect a new version to arrive around 2023. And so if we don't see one in 2023, then it might mean that Mazda's just eking out the car for as long as they can before they just end up calling it a day. So we'll see what Mazda do in the next few years, whether it's going to be a 5th generation MX-5 or whether we just won't have the car anymore. Anyway, thanks for watching the MX-5 video. Thanks for watching the Optional Extra. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.